The 1950s in America are often romanticized as a golden age of prosperity and stability, a time when families gathered around the dinner table and women fulfilled their roles as perfect housewives. However, beneath this idealized image lay a stark reality for many women. The life of a housewife in this era was far from idyllic, particularly for those whose daily existence was shaped by sexism. With limited social support and the stigma surrounding mental health, they often turned to substances as a means of escaping the harsh realities of their lives. In the 1950s, the role of the housewife was narrowly defined. Women were expected to marry young, have children, and devote themselves entirely to their families. A woman's worth was measured by her ability to keep a spotless home, cook nutritious meals, and raise well-mannered children, all while maintaining an attractive appearance for her husband. Popular media reinforced these ideals, portraying housewives as cheerful, devoted, and content with their roles. Advertisements, TV shows, and magazines glamorized domestic life, masking the emotional toll it took on countless women. Yet, the reality of life as a housewife was far more complex. Many women felt trapped in a cycle of monotony and undervalued labor, with few opportunities for personal growth or meaningful work outside the home. They were often left feeling unfulfilled and resentful. This dissatisfaction was compounded by societal attitudes that dismissed women's grievances as frivolous or ungrateful. Mental health issues such as depression and anxiety were common, though rarely acknowledged or treated in a meaningful way. The sexism of the 1950s was pervasive and institutionalized. Women were discouraged from pursuing higher education or professional careers, as these were seen as incompatible with their roles as wives and mothers. Those who did seek employment outside the home often faced discrimination, unequal pay, and limited career prospects. Even within their households, women lacked autonomy, as their husbands typically controlled the family finances and made major decisions. Complaining about their circumstances risked being labeled as a bad wife or bad mother, further silencing their struggles. American housewives were expected to embody the ideal of the cheerful, obedient caretaker, devoted entirely to their husbands and families. When women failed to conform to these rigid societal norms, their behavior was often pathologized rather than understood as a reaction to the overwhelming pressures of their domestic roles. Husbands, doctors, and even broader society often labeled women who expressed dissatisfaction, defiance, or independence as hysterical, unstable, or neurotic. In these cases, overmedication became a common, misguided solution. Women were frequently prescribed tranquilizers, sedatives, and other medications not to address the root causes of their struggles, but to suppress their emotions and ensure compliance. Drugs like barbiturates and benzodiazepines were marketed as tools to help women calm their nerves and maintain composure, allowing them to perform their household duties without complaint. These drugs, often prescribed at the urging of husbands or medical professionals, reinforced the belief that a woman's unhappiness was a personal flaw rather than a symptom of systemic sexism. This ensured they adhered to the domestic ideal without questioning their roles or challenging their circumstances. For many housewives, this overmedication served as a chemical cage, further entrenching them in lives devoid of autonomy or fulfillment. Substance use became a prevalent coping mechanism for housewives navigating the unrelenting demands of their roles. Tranquilizers, known as mother's little helpers, allowed women to suppress their feelings of anxiety, depression, and resentment, enabling them to function within the confines of their prescribed lives. Meanwhile, alcohol emerged as another common outlet. Cocktail culture was highly glamorized during the 1950s, and many housewives turned to daytime drinking as a way to temporarily escape the monotony and stress of domestic life. Social drinking, often portrayed as sophisticated or celebratory, masked the reality of many women self-medicating their emotional pain. Some housewives also relied on amphetamines, marketed as diet pills to help them maintain their figures in a culture that placed immense value on female beauty. These stimulants not only suppressed appetite, but also provided bursts of energy, enabling women to manage the endless chores and childcare responsibilities expected of them. However, the misuse of amphetamines often came with severe physical and emotional consequences, including insomnia, anxiety, and addiction. In addition to substance abuse, consumer culture provided another form of escapism for 1950s housewives. Shopping, particularly through mail-order catalogs, became a popular pastime. These catalogs offered a wide array of household appliances, furniture, and clothing, promising to make life easier and more glamorous. Women were bombarded with advertisements that suggested their happiness, and the happiness of their families depended on the latest gadgets and products. Purchasing new appliances like vacuum cleaners, washing machines, and ovens gave women a temporary sense of control and accomplishment. These items were marketed as tools that would reduce their workload, though in reality, they often reinforced the expectation that women should excel at domestic duties. The act of shopping also provided a brief escape from the monotony of daily life, offering a sense of excitement and novelty in an otherwise predictable routine. Housewives in the 1950s engaged in a variety of activities to fill their time, many of which were tied to their roles as homemakers. Sewing, knitting, and crafting were common hobbies, as they aligned with the expectation that women should create and maintain a beautiful home. Socializing with other housewives during coffee mornings or neighborhood gatherings provided some relief from isolation. But these interactions often revolved around superficial topics and reinforced societal norms. For women who sought more meaningful engagement, opportunities were limited. Volunteering, joining clubs, or participating in church activities were among the few socially acceptable outlets for personal growth. However, these pursuits rarely addressed the deeper emotional or intellectual needs of women who yearned for greater autonomy and purpose. The struggles of 1950s housewives laid the groundwork for the feminist movements of the 1960s and beyond, as more women began to speak out about their dissatisfaction and demand change. Society slowly started to recognize the flaws in the idealized image of domesticity. The rise of second-wave feminism brought attention to issues such as gender inequality, mental health, and the need for greater opportunities for women in all aspects of life. For many women, mind-altering substances offered temporary relief from the overwhelming pressures of their roles, but ultimately perpetuated a cycle of dependency and dissatisfaction. The widespread use of medication and alcohol among housewives of the 1950s highlight the systemic failure to address the root causes of their suffering, rather than recognizing the societal constraints that left so many women unfulfilled and oppressed. The culture of the time sought to medicate away their struggles, silencing their voices and ensuring compliance with the status quo. Looking back on the experiences of these women, it becomes clear that the 1950s were not a golden age for everyone. For many housewives, it was a time of suppression, loneliness, and unacknowledged suffering. Yet, their resilience and coping mechanisms, flawed as they may have been, highlight the strength and determination of women who sought to survive and make the best of their circumstances. Their stories serve as a reminder of the importance of recognizing and addressing the systemic issues that continue to shape women's lives today.